One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Before we get started, we want to thank this month's sponsor, introducing Gong.io, the #1 conversation intelligence platform for sales. Gong helps you generate more revenue by having better sales conversations. It automatically captures and analyzes your team's conversations so you can transform your team into quota-shattering super sellers. Visit gong.io/sales hacker to get in on the action and see it live. And now, on with the show. Hey everybody, I'm here with Andrea Kayal, the Chief Marketing Officer of Signpost. We're so excited to have her on the Sales Hacker podcast. I want to tell you a little bit about Andrea. She's, in my opinion, the best marketer in New York City at a minimum. And she's one of the people that I rely on for a lot of guidance around marketing in general, but demand generation specifically. But let me read you her bio. As the Chief Marketing Officer, Andrea is responsible for marketing, customer success, and business operations at Signpost. Her focus areas are demand generation, brand messaging, creative, marketing automation, marketing communications, PR, marketing sales alignment, and customer retention. Before joining Signpost, Andrea led marketing teams at TimeLink, Lua, and Sailthrough. And before transitioning into tech, she worked at Octagon, where she managed global marketing initiatives for BMW and MasterCard. She went to the University of Michigan, go Blue, and received her MBA from American University. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks for the kind words. And yes, go Blue.
We're happy to have you. I'm happy to have you. So to frame your experience for everybody, because they don't know you as well as I do, let's talk about what we call your baseball card. So we know your name, Andrea Kayal, CMO at Signpost. Tell us a little bit about Signpost. Who are they? What do they do?
Sure. So Signpost is an AI-driven CRM, which basically drives reviews and revenue for local service businesses. So it is more SMB and mid-market focused. Previously, I was focused on enterprise, but that's sort of the high level of Signpost.
Okay. And revenue range for the company, so we know how big it is, generally speaking.
Signpost is 20 to 25 million. But when I've joined this company and my previous company, Sailthrough, we were around the $9 to $10 million range. So in both cases, I've sseen sort of, we've doubled the ARR. Yeah, exactly.
Doubling is good. We like to double.
It's good, yes.
And your experience at Sailthrough is awesome. So, we know a lot of the same people like Dave Govan from
yeah.
How much money have you guys raised?
So we're in C. We raised about $20 million.
Okay. And then the size of the org, so we understand the context, like how big is the organization that you're running, both the marketing org, and if you have insights on the sales team and the SDRs, that would be great.
Sure. So Signpost is about a 150-person organization. About 100 of those, a little bit less, are in sales roles. So we have a very, very heavy sales-focused business. And I oversee 3 departments or 3 functions. So first, marketing and RevOps. Those are the 2 that I see that generate the demand. And then alternately, on the other side of the business, I oversee about a 40-person customer success organization. So not only am I responsible for working with the sales team to generate the revenue, but I have to worry about the cash leaving the business as well.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel like is that the right alignment?
Honestly, it's a fantastic. It's given me fantastic, perspective because, usually marketing is responsible for driving leads to sales leaders or sales accepted leads or, whatever the terminology the business is using. And you're really worried about the quality of that business. But frankly, the most important thing is not only the quality for the sales team to close the deal, but is the fit of the business a match? Because you have to retain the cash on the other end, right? Like, and anybody looking at the business in terms of like the value that they're going to give you when they either acquire you or whatever you're IPOing, they want to make sure that the customers actually use the product and are staying on for a long time. So it's been massively beneficial to me as just a marketer to know both, what's good for revenue driving, but then like which businesses are good for retaining.
Yeah. I've seen customer success report to sales all the time. And in fact, I've run those organizations, but I don't know that I've seen customer success report to
marketing. When we were doing sort of the design for our business, org design for the business, and I was talking to the CEO about this, that the head of sales today has massive, his responsibility for revenue is sort of like, has a lot of breadth. And we have nearly 7 sales channels. And the reason it reports to marketing today, one is, is sort of a capacity issue, but 2, we're working on actually making the customer success org more of a revenue generation. Today it's more like a revenue retention model. When we change that, we may move the org under a different leader. But today it's been just one data point here on customer success. Interestingly enough, when I took over the org, it was much larger than it is today. But the good news is we've taken the org in terms of like cost, headcount, like the cost of revenue down 20% year over year, and we've increased our retention improvement 20% year over year. So the good news is we're making some really great progress on the CS side, but it's like, for at least for this group, it's a helpful perspective in terms of the deals we drive. Yeah. So it's been good news.
Well, typically what we do is get your life story, but I might stay here for a second because that's kind of amazing. And also just as a testament to your capabilities, a lot of people ask me, where should XYZ function report? There's ways that you can design the organization, but a lot of the times it's just the capabilities and talent of the leadership. And so if you've got a leader like you get more responsibility. And if,
well, thanks, Sam. So kind of you to say that. The funny thing is, though, it's, that's a double-edged sword. I mean, now I have 3 departments. The good news is, yes, that I feel thankful that the CEO empowered me to basically take a project and get good people around it and solve a problem. I think that that's really key. You need to know that your leader can do that. But also as we scale, I think that that's been the most exciting part of this job for me, has just been in being able to tackle the challenges too. It's been really fun.
It keeps it interesting. So, we don't want to be too mercenary about this, but you lowered cost 20% and you increased retention 20%. What did you do differently, or any key tactics or insights that you learned over the last, I guess it's year running customer success that we can share with the audience?
Yeah. When I inherited the org, I would say, and this is an answer to one of the questions that I reviewed below, which is what is the biggest driver between success and failure in your most recent role? I can answer that very specifically, at least as it relates to CS. That's removing complexity. We had a lot of people doing sort of very complicated CS management and a lot of complicated systems feeding into how they did their day-to-day job. So what I did was I just looked holistically at all the roles, and I broke down basically the time they're spending in the role. And we consolidated tasks. So I think the long and the short of this is when we sign up a Signpost merchant, they were going between different CS teams. I basically combined all those teams and gave that one account manager the responsibility of all of those. What that allowed us to do is scale. So we weren't constrained artificially by sort of these small teams. We now gave everybody the account from start to finish, which allowed them to grow their books way beyond, sort of the artificial constraints that were in there. And I think it was just a matter of, like I said, removing the complexity. With all that complicated process in there, it was a very high tax and encumbered us from sort of scale. So that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah. So the counter argument would be, well, specialization of labor is itself a form of simplicity. And if the account manager, are you saying that basically maybe you had an onboarding team or an implementation team, and then you had an ongoing CS team, and you made all of that one thing?
Exactly.
The requirements and the activities still exist. Did you consolidate platforms? Did you put everything on, I don't know, Gainsight or Tatango or Salesforce in some way to remove the systems that were required to execute those tasks?
Actually, it was just first it was labor. And then to your point on technology, we have a Salesforce developer that's fantastic because we have 100 people relying on Salesforce. We actually need our own developer to sort of manage the load on the system.
Yeah.
We built our own version of Gainsight in only a matter of 2 days with our developers because we felt like we knew which indicators of success or failure for our customers better than Gainsight was going to come in with their recommendations. We were look, in our particular case, we have 2 key metrics that we know are going to be really positive indication of this customer on their way. And that actually has to do with the amount of context that they email their business. And separately, we use other inputs like their NPS score. And, so we said look, we think we know what these variables are. Can I just have Dev build me a red, yellow, green version of this in Salesforce? And you know what? It's working. We went the route of build first. It's not our core competency to build the Gainsight. But in this case, it worked very well for us, which has been a huge win. Our teams have about 400 to 500 accounts each.
Wow.
And so they need to prioritize pretty quickly who they need to focus on. And that system allows them to do that.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Great work.
And
to your point, the CS platforms, we're not going to call anybody out specifically, but they when they pitch you, they're telling you, I was on a call once and they said, well, you need to hire a CS engineer. Maybe I don't need to buy you right now. That
That's
is
exactly where we came from. We said, okay, like, and those technologies are fantastic for some orgs. For ours, we just felt like we're lean and that load is also massive. Managing the technology to manage the accounts is a lot. So
yeah, it
we
is.
went our own route.
So when I got to know you, you were a lowly VP of marketing, but give us your origin story. And we know you went to Michigan. Where are you from originally? And I read over some of your amazing experience at Sailthrough and a bunch of other places, but give us the snapshot of how you got here today for the future marketers and salespeople that want to be a CMO one day.
Sure. Actually, I was just at the University of Michigan. They flew me out 2 weeks ago to give the same story because the graduating marketers want to know, like, how do you navigate this? So I felt very proud of going back to my alma mater to talk about that sort of navigation. But it actually started, I went to University of Michigan because I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go play soccer there.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was on the University of Michigan soccer team for 4 years. And I, had a deep passion for soccer, obviously my entire life. And so when I was graduating, I was like, what do I do? Should I, what's going to be the job? And, I was graduating with communications degree. I said, like, well, maybe sports marketing and aligns like the communications and it aligns the sport. And I got my first job with a company called Octagon, which I still near and dear to my heart. It was my first job that I was at for about 6 years. And while I was there, I had two fantastic accounts, both BMW and MasterCard. BMW for the majority of the time, about 4 years, MasterCard for about 2. And as a marketer, first, it was different in two ways. One, it was B2C marketing. And second, it was very large corporate accounts. And those brands were fantastic for me to sort of like get my bearing in marketing because they were the sort of epitomize, at least on the BMW side, like what it means to have like brand integrity and really how to take the dollars you spend and make sure that you have like massive exposure. So anyway, I learned very quickly about branding at a very high level. And I did the same when I was at MasterCard. We did the 2006 World Cup. So that was like a massive undertaking. It was 150.
Given your soccer background, it was
amazing. It was amazing. And I for part of that, my boss and mentor, Marissa D'Amico, she was responsible for MasterCard's spokespeople, which was Pele. So I, for 2 years, worked with my idol, sort of globetrotting with him for the World Cup appearances. And, I can remember, staying up late night with him watching the World Cup games, and we were kicking the soccer ball in the hallway of like a Four Seasons in like Mexico. It was just like
that is an incredible memory. That's amazing.
I know it was sort of surreal and such a wonderful time in my life. But like zooming out from there, I said like this was great. What I really enjoyed about the marketing was like how creative. I love everything about marketing, and that was a fantastic experience on the B2C side, But I said, the consumer brands, like it's great to like work in big corporate consumer brands. I said, but like, I really enjoy like tech, it's booming. I really want to get into this. So I went back to business school so that I could sort of learn the fundamentals, sort of level up my business acumen and make sure that I could at least have a seat at the table if I were to take a job and start up in tech. And so after that, I took my first job at TimeLink, which is like the most boring technology in the world. Time and attendance is like, you want to talk about technology that's like not really that fun to market. It's that. But the CEO had modest expectations. He said, like 4 million, we want to go to like 8. And I said, well, I'll, take a chance on me. I have a B2C marketing background, but, I will dig in and I will make sure that I can help grow this business. And we did that in 3 years. We got sold to Kronos. And then I went to Lua. I actually had a sort of a misstep at Lua. It was a Series A company. And for someone like me, it was a little hard to sort of work within the budget constraints of Series A.
What does Lua do? Or did they do?
So it's a workforce communication technology. Right now, they specialize in healthcare. So at the time, they were servicing many industries. I think that they've pivoted and been specific to healthcare. But in any case, one of my colleagues that I had left TimeLink with was at Sailthrough. And she said, like, well, they're looking for marketers. So then I went to Sailthrough and I was sort of head of growth. The day I was hired, the CMO was let go. And so I sort of walked into this de facto like head of marketing role there. I had fantastic colleagues on the Sailthrough side, and I was there a little under 2 years before Signpost, before OpenView had reached out to me, which is one of Signpost investors. And I've been here about 3 years.
I love the story. And by the way, don't worry about missteps. I've made more than my fair share.
It's easy to do. You'd think based on all the, the conversations you have before you take another role, you think you'd have vetted everything. But, there's dynamics in any business that makes it just something that may not be a match. So
Yeah. And the other part of it is that the more senior you are, the more your vision alignment with the founder has to be in sync, because it just can't work if you see the world differently than the founder and you're part of the executive team. You immediately get out of alignment.
Absolutely. And, the one other point I'd make on the founder piece of it, my current CEO today, Stu, he's a first time. Yeah, Stu Wall. He's fantastic. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I've learned in the 3 years, the amount I've learned has been absolutely incredible. I have him to thank for that. But he is a first time founder too. There is a difference, I think, in, working with first time founders and working with somebody that's more seasoned. I think that those, more seasoned CEOs who've done this like multiple times, just have different perspectives. And I haven't yet worked with a founder that isn't first time. So I think hopefully in, the next set of roles I take in my career, I'd be interested to see perhaps what that was like.
That's really interesting. I guess a lot of us have spent a lot of time with first time founders. I think the thing that comes, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but it's funny because the more senior folks are much looser in some ways, in the sense that they're much more comfortable delegating, because they know what they know and they know what they don't know and aren't good at, and don't have any anxiety about that. They don't feel any pressure to be great at everything. They understand, this is the thing I'm good at. I'm going to hire great people and let them do their thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Having not worked with someone who isn't a first-time founder, I can imagine though that for a first-time founder, that those things are really hard to do, like relinquish control, because it's your baby and you've been turning the levers.
Exactly. And the last point is probably that, if you're super young, Stu actually has a lot of experience at this point, but other first-timers that I've worked with, they're a little self-conscious, because maybe they're wondering, should I be in this role in the first place? And so they sometimes feel the need to overcompensate.
Absolutely. I mean, it's natural. Like, I don't, to no fault of their own. I just think that that's really this thing that they suffer from. Sometimes, like, they can't get out of their own way. But, in any case, he is fantastic. And, he's been a wonderful sort of mentor.
Yeah. And you guys have built that business to a place that, from my perspective, once you're past 20 million, that's, I guess, Jason Lemkin or Aaron Ross or somebody says that anything past $1 million is inevitable to get to 100, which is absolutely insanity. But my perspective is that really the period north of 10, from 10 to 20, is the hardest part of scaling.
It's hard. I've seen 10 to 20 twice, Sail Through and Signpost. But there is part of me, beyond Signpost, what does 20 to 40 look like as a marketer? And do the tactics change? What do the investments look like? Those are very, interesting sort of concepts for me as I move forward.
Yeah. I think I know how talented you are. I don't think my experience in life is that the product market fit is going to pull you along, and you're not going to get less intelligent as you go from 20 to 40.
I hope not. But yeah, I that's sort of my thought about that too, that, you don't lose your ability to think about how to make investments in marketing efforts that are working, right? You just keep dumping the money into the channel that's making you the most money. And having an eye for that is really something that doesn't change. But
I agree. There's investors out there that are always going to, because it's especially prominent in my role, where they're saying, well, we need, you're the 0 to 30 CRO, but we need the 30 to 100 from Oracle or Salesforce. And I'm not sure those people are going to have the intensity that's necessary sometimes to keep pushing this business forward. But
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
So moving away from a somewhat controversial topic to a less controversial topic, a lot of people have a different point of view on what the word marketing means. And a lot of people don't know what it means. And 20 years ago, I think there was even less information or education in the market. And people basically assumed it's branding. It's you make the brochures, and maybe you're in charge of the website, and you do the laborious logo redesign. What do you think marketing means?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think marketing is synonymous with revenue. I view marketing as a service org to revenue. The revenue team, which would be yours, other CROs, like my job is to make sure that your teams are set up for success in terms of like, how do you find the accounts you should be working? And then how do you go sell into those in the most efficient manner? There are many disciplines to marketing, which is why sometimes people conflate what the job is or really have this like nebulous understanding of like marketing. But from my perspective, there's probably about 7 disciplines in marketing. But brand is something that always evolves and iterates as you grow. I mean, unless your product is, even BMW, right? They have the most, in my opinion, like fantastic brand guidelines on the planet. And they're very strict about those. And so there's some things that, you drive a stake in the ground with. BMW hasn't gone through a rebrand in many, many years. But if you're a company like Signpost or you're in a startup, the product is likely going to change more frequently than BMW is. And so from my experience, right, like you have to keep brand as like this iterative, living, breathing thing. And brand just very simply is like what you say you are, like how do you speak, like what is the message and the tone and the ethos of the brand, and then the design, which is like how you look. So those 2 components make up the brand, and you constantly work on those. We went through a rebrand at Signpost, mainly because I wanted to codify some of those things that are important for our business. And we had many, many, many different iterations of the Signpost brand here, like different color palettes, like things were really all over the place. So I said, like, let's pull this together because I do think that those are important and foundational. I do not consider myself a brand marketer, though. I can't come to you with some eloquent copy that's, going to like blow your mind in 4 words. I worked with an agency on that, and I was very happy with the agency that I picked for the rebrand. But brand is something that lives on always. Beyond that, there are just like core disciplines, which is like content marketing, digital marketing, product marketing, customer marketing. There's many disciplines underneath that. And so I think long and the short of this is that as a marketer, the job is really to just ruthlessly prioritize like where you spend time to drive the most revenue and put good people around you that are better than you in any one of those areas. And I had the benefit of like working really hard as a marketer, getting my hands really dirty for many, many years. So I know how to do all of these. I just now I'm afforded the like luxury of getting good people to do them better than I could. So
yeah. One quick question for my own edification. You went through a rebrand. What is that? I know what it means, but what does it mean? So, how long was it? How time intensive? I guess the output was a bunch of different things.
Yep.
And how involved was the agency? I'm just curious on the overall process because I think a lot of founders out there, frankly, have a point of we're all wondering like, how do you codify and articulate the brand through deliverables and through output?
Totally. So I am very left brain marketer. I think my strength, like I said, is demand gen. And so the brand piece for me is actually a little bit harder. I need help there. And that for me, so that meant an agency. So I went through a very, very rigorous agency process where I wrote an RFP and I just basically said like, okay, what are the things that are important to us? We need to codify our message. We need somebody to help us really communicate what it is we do and not in a way that just says like we're marketing automation. That was the goal. It was the ethos of the project was to say like speak to people. And so that was part of the RFP is the message and also the design. Now for us, we had a product UX that we needed to redo anyway because the actual product didn't communicate all the value that Mia drives, which is our AI. So I said, like, look, if we're really going to do this right, I can't be in some marketing silo and just developing a new logo, a color palette, and dimension to the brand without a product that we feel good about. So ours was 2-part. We had the agency work on product dashboard, which delivered, which is on our site today. That helped feed the tone and the style of the actual brand too. And the process was about 10 weeks. I was like, once we selected the agency, I was ruthless about taking them through a 10-week process. They want that done too. So we were like very strict about our timelines. We had weekly check-ins with the CEO, but I had daily check-ins with them on the process and the deliverable from that. I was very clear about. I wanted new messaging, which I wanted delivered in a deck, which could be communicated in mission, vision, values. And then I wanted them to take that and I wanted them to give me 4 pages of our website, which included copywriting. So they did all that. They delivered a dashboard. They delivered brand and style guide with like all the stuff that you see on Signpost today, which is sort of like these thin lines, a new logo, and the site for 10 weeks and for $100,000. That was a heavier investment than we wanted to make. But if you think about how we broke out the project, $50,000 was spent on product UX and design, which is actually pretty inexpensive. And $50,000 was spent on the marketing rebrand, which is by itself pretty inexpensive to go through everything we did.
They gave you style guide and sort of brand guidelines to the product team maybe a third of the way through so that,
exactly.
UX could evolve in conjunction with, their splash page redesign and stuff like that.
Exactly. And the CEO and the head of product and we met. That was like a 3-legged stool. because one, it's the vision of the CEO, which is important from my perspective, right? I have opinions, but this is his baby. And so my job is, I really felt like the facilitator. And that's why I'm okay with not being the one who needs to copyright a website or who has all these like magical thoughts about what I think the brand should look like. Because frankly, it's not up to me. It's him. So that's what I did. And he was very, very satisfied. I think he's very happy. We're actually, we're going through another messaging project today because it changes a lot. His vision for where we're every day, not every day, but like, once a quarter, you kind of like revisit what the product is doing and say like, okay, are we still matched up to the message? And actually that's changing a little bit. So that's very long-winded answer.
No, it's important because there's so much, in podcast land and thought leader land, you get a lot of high-level bullshit sometimes, but now that's an important data.
That's the weeds. I have a playbook on it too that I would share. My job is like bring that playbook with me where I go. I would be anybody needing that. I'd be happy to share like even the agency lists in New York and things like that. I think I have a very good like folder of stuff. So,
well, you're awesome. Thank you. There's a part of marketing that everybody talks about. Everybody wants demand generation. The funny / hilarious / depressing thing I've seen is people, nobody knows what it means. They all say, okay, I want a demand generation manager. They hire that person and then they give them about 2 weeks. And then they say, well, where's the money? It takes a little longer than that. Tell us about your thoughts on demand generation, because I've learned a lot of my perspective from you. It'd be great for you to share your perspective.
Sure. It's funny that you put all those adjectives together, which is like hilarious and like horrifying. And it is like actually all of those things. Simply demand gen is just how do you generate interest in the product? From my perspective, there's 2 ways to do that. You can push their information to somebody. That's more of I don't want to call it brand awareness, but that's how you like sort of disrupt a buying cycle is by pushing your information. And that's why email is a channel that's most often used because you're trying to just get your information out there. But that's push, right? Like they didn't come to you. They weren't making a search for it. They just said we think we've identified you as a need for this. The method I like better, which actually works very well on the SMB side, is the pull. HubSpot made a big deal about inbound a long time ago. So it's not a new concept, but frankly, like the buying motion is a much more highly converting channel when they've come to you. When you've sent something out there in the world and then they've raised their hand and said like, oh yeah, this is something I'm interested in reading about. That's a more highly qualified lead, obviously, than like a cold call or a LinkedIn connection. Those demand gen efforts. So today, as an example, this may be less relevant to those selling into enterprise, but I'll speak to our AdWords for SMB. Right now, we have a whole demand gen team, which is 100 people cold calling on the phone. They are disrupting buying cycles and they're cold calling.
And it's super interesting that you called the SDRs a demand gen team, because to your point, you view activities of getting people interested in the product to be a marketing function.
Right? I do. Definitely. Yeah. I think about it that way. I view sales as like the person who's able to take the interest then and go cultivate a relationship and get the deal done. That's a skill set I rely on you for. I think I'd be the worst salesperson on the planet, but I'm happy to give you guys, layups or conversations. But yeah, all that's demand gen. And then on the inbound demand gen, I love like when you can get people coming to you, raising their hand because they're interested, those are going to convert much more highly than anybody you've
bludgeoned over the head with 50 cold calls
and emails, like you can have the most magical drip campaign on the planet, but like, if somebody's not ready to buy and they don't see, they can't immediately see the value, they're deleting your emails. But that's why content marketing service is such a like important discipline because it's the very highest part of the demand gen is what did you put out there in the world that pulled somebody into your funnel? And the middle of the funnel, then that's when the product marketer comes in because, okay, they're like now generally interested in what your product, like the problem, which the content marketer should solve for. And then the product marketing should say like, okay, this is actually the solution that fixes it. And then the customer marketing piece is like, okay, these are all the customers that are using it that are like kicking butt that these people in the funnel should now know about. So I sort of see that as like how that group of tasks plays into the demand gen. So
yeah. And you were mentioning AdWords. What were you going to tell us about? Tell us about different productive channels to get leads, because that's what everybody wants.
I know, right? So AdWords works incredibly well for us on the SMB side. Less so when I was at Sailthrough when if you're a good CMO, you have a general idea of the technologies that were out there in the world. So I'll just give you an example. Like AdWords did work at Sailthrough, and frankly, I can't speak to what it's doing now. It did drive pipeline. It's rare though that a CMO of like J. Crew is Googling like, which email service provider should I use? I mean, fuck, excuse me. But if you're the head of marketing at J. Crew and you're Googling what email service provider should I use? I mean, again, maybe it's people doing research and just trying to see what's out there, but that's far less likely. You're hopefully more up to speed on that because you have a team of people invested in like responses or a sale through or whatever. So we found that, that the work just, different kinds of pipeline was actually being generated from those efforts. On the SMB side, there are local business owners that actually have no idea how to market or email market, or they have like pain point. They act like, I don't want to say they're all not technologically sophisticated, but the goal of them owning a business wasn't like, what technologies can I use to get this job done better? It's like, I have a customer base I need to make happy. My cousin owns TerraCare, a landscaping company. He's worried about like plowing. He's not like, do I need this CRM? But in his pain points, when he does have a problem, he says like, how do I email market? He searches for things that are like problems for him, if that makes sense. And that's when that channel for us on the local business side becomes very important, very powerful, because we show up, we fill a very specific need for that specific search, and we get them right to a sales team, and the sales team closes them. So top to bottom, that conversion channel for us is 5%.
Wow, that's very good.
Yeah, it's good in terms of conversion rate, and the LTV to CAC on that is about 2. Now, some people would say like,
not as good.
but think about the market. We closed a lot of those. Every dollar we put in, we get $2 out, and we close lots of them. The top line revenue grows, and we still net better than we would have without it. On the enterprise side, though, right? Like if you're not at like 3 to 5, forget it.
When you say 5%, is it from the form fill after the ad click?
Yes. So from lead to close.
Yeah.
So after the form fill.
That's still good. That's still very good.
Yeah. And like I said, the metric we care about is LTV to CAC. So I look at actually the funnel conversion rate. The thing that matters for the business is LTV to CAC. Obviously the same would go, it's true for any business. So if you move all the way up to enterprise, the LTV to CAC matters. Now, the LTV on enterprise deals is so high that you can afford to bring your marketing CAC up. That's why you can do an event for like $15,000, which I love for the enterprise, right? Hand-to-hand combat. Those people are there because they like need, or they're doing their research at least, If you meet somebody at a trade show, like they flew all the way to wherever to get to the exhibit hall where they know they're going to get pummeled and emailed till the end of time. But if you have a meaningful conversation with them there, the likelihood of that close is also going to be very high, and you'll pay that off more than 5x, in my opinion.
I agree.
Do you like trade shows, Sam? I mean, when you go, are you like, this is meaningful?
It is the age-old question. And the reason it's the age-old question is because a lot of the times, if you're going to sponsor a show, the booth cost is going to compare to hiring 2 SDRs probably, at least for the first year. So from that perspective, I don't love them. I like them when we can speak at them. When like the CEO can be on a panel, or we can be invested more than just writing a huge check to the organizer. And then there's certain shows that I feel sort of obligated to be at. And then the final thought is I like hijacking them, which is the Mark Benioff thing of I'll just do a dinner around the trade show. I'm not going to go to the show. But to your point, it's a bunch of people that have expressly raised their hand and said, this is a category where I have pain and interest. So let me find a way to entice them with some kind of event or some kind of gathering.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when you can hijack them, you should. But, at Sale Through, we had a consistent presence with e-tail because we sold specifically to e-commerce retail, which is like literally their whole base. So we spent to make sure that we were in front of that group more frequently, so they felt like we were a trusted partner, because we were competing against some of the like legacy techs, like, responses. And we had to win the business. And, we felt like the more we could get in front of them with a consistent presence, then we would make them feel like, okay.
When I was at Livestream, we would spend, it's to your point, you just got to have a solid point of view on your unit economics.
Yeah.
That will inform how comfortable you feel, because, when we were at Livestream, we would spend, close to 7 figures to go to the show, NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. And the problem with that was that the deal sizes were so tiny, and it was such a big show. We'd scan 5,000 leads. I didn't have a good framework for figuring out what to do with those leads in the right way. The other thing I'll say, last thing about trade shows, is I often feel like it's a snake eating a pig. It's very hard to digest a batch of like 1,000 leads that you scan to the show all at once. There's no natural way. I'd much rather prefer, frankly, 1,000 leads over the course of 6 weeks, where I've got like a workflow and a motion set up to handle each lead in the proper way. Otherwise, it's just a lot falls through the cracks.
Yeah, you get like completely saturated with the leads and it's hard to know, like qualify them based on that. Events is one channel. Digital is getting very good now at sort of rounding out your like omni-channel experience because you get very precise in targeting either accounts or contacts, because with Facebook and LinkedIn in particular, you can do an exact email match in either one of those systems where you're like, okay, I have this person's email. In some cases, and I would say 40% of the time, that's been my experience, you can do an exact email match because some people don't use their work email. I mean, some people don't use their work email for Facebook. A lot don't.
Yeah.
And the same is true with LinkedIn. So it's very unlikely you have their personal email, but you can get very creative with how you try to find these people in both digital channels. And in that case, you are pushing your information in front of them, but they do come in as inbound once they've raised their hand, which I like. That's automatically like self-selecting. And those are better ways for me to get leads to the sales org, so they're not sifting through, like you said, like the crazy amounts of unqualified. So that's on the digital side. There's another channel that I really love, which we haven't invested too much in here because we haven't gone up market, but that's affiliate. I'm not sure what your perspective is on this though, Sam. Like, I'll give you an example, like eMarketer, right? Lots of like if you want to reach a CMO, you can probably assume that the CMOs are on some distribution list for eMarketer and also for CMO.com. Those are like affiliates. You just pay to get access to these people. And then again, like you do an email blast with them. And then once the blast goes out, you collect all the inbounds. We did a Forrester webinar. So we paid Forrester for a webinar. It was a significant investment.
To be rated by, are you in like one of their quadrants before you get the webinar?
No.
Okay.
No, which is why I did it. This is my recommendation to anybody in enterprise who thinks that they need analyst relations is to get your name on the map. It's sort of pay to play, but you do get your name on the map. You get the Forrester briefings. They listen to your CEO talk about what the technology is. And then the CEO and the Forrester analyst, and we actually had a customer all do a joint webinar together. It was really powerful. And then we took that webinar and I gave it to Business Insider and I said, like, go blast this out. We got 450 people to give us their information to access the information. So that means it's exactly the person we want. It may not be the accounts we want, but the function is there. And separately, they came in as hand raisers. So like they're at least warmer. So maybe they have connections or whatever. So there are many creative ways to generate demand, but there is no exact science at first. It's art in thinking about where you want to go spend a little bit of money to test. And then, like I said, once you just double down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've often said to me that you're head of demand gen as a hedge fund portfolio manager, figuring out what stocks to buy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's like the best analogy I could draw because, that's what you do. Like, the business is going to give you cash and the job is to go figure out how to get more cash from that cash. So that's
before we almost, we're nearing the end of our time together. But I want to close out. What's your number one sort of recommendation when CEOs or companies are thinking about demand generation or initiating that function? Do you have one or two insights to help a first-time founder that's thinking about hiring a marketer, how to frame or think about demand generation investment?
I would say, not to go too senior on the hire. I mean, that may be intuitive, but generally, if you can get a doer to help think about, the CEO is likely the person who may have the best intuition about where to find the people he's selling to or wants to sell the product to. You can test small amounts of money with like a good, smart doer first to just get like a general, it depends on how small, right? We tested small amounts of money when I came here to find the answers to that. And then we parked the money. It doesn't need to be some crazy, like massive heavy lift and all these analyses. And if you're willing to spend $10,000 to test across 4 or 5 channels, that should probably do it. But you have to commit some money and just some time. So there's no magic bullet, I think, on the demand gen, but I think people get very scared about it. And then they think that they have to go on some search on LinkedIn for like the best demand gen person in the city. And that may not be the case.
Yeah. And also, by the way, those people you are a rare breed. There's not many great demand gen people. So you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty.
Yes, exactly.
Always. The pay it forward part of our conversation. So one thing we like to know is what's in your tech stack, 1 or 2 tools that you think other people should know about and what do they do for you?
This is going to be awful, but Marketo is our sort of clutch. Marketing automation, probably obvious. I love Gecko Board. I have many different sources feeding me data.
What is Gecko Board?
Oh God, it's amazing. It's like $100 a month. basically it's a BI tool. I mean, again, it doesn't actually do any of the marketing for you, but it gives me good insights for where I should be turning levers. It's a BI that just integrates all your different technologies. So like AdWords is feeding into Gecko Board. Marketo is feeding into Gecko Board. Salesforce feeds into Gecko Board. So the techs I do have, and I have a very lean tech stack, Marketo being like the most important one. But the other information I do have comes feeding into Gecko Board, and it's just one-stop shop. I get the app on my phone. I can have the dashboard, and it gives me all the information.
Awesome. Okay, great. I'm moving out of order from our script here, but advice for specifically women. We're in a diversity moment. So as a successful, powerful technology executive that is also a woman, any advice or thoughts about how they should manage their careers to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think this is an incredibly important topic. Obviously, with recent developments across every industry, it's becoming even more acute. I would say, though, that I've tried to operate from a place of results for my career. I've worked hard. I've put my head down. I sadly may have been oblivious to anybody who is treating me differently because I'm female, but I know it exists. And I think the advice for me in this situation is to just let your results speak for themselves and like really let it guide you forward. So when you're given a task or when you're in a room, you need to make sure that you are standing behind the work you're doing with like really good data. So that's been sort of the thing I think that has kept me moving forward, is that it hasn't been about gender, even though I do know it's a problem for some or for many, that my guiding light has been just kick some ass, and then hopefully that those things can kind of fall out of your way.
Yeah. Well, it's good advice.
Thank you.
Your favorite other execs, VPs of sales or CMOs or VPs of marketing that we all should know about?
Sure. So, you mentioned him earlier, but Dave Govin was a fantastic partner at Sailthrough. John Padell, really smart head of sales. Brad Keim, he was our SVP of BD here. You, of course, Sam, I know we frequently go back and forth because you're my partner on the other side. So you're the guy that's generating all the revenue. I need to know like where your pain points are. As an example, the CROs are very important for me. And then the two marketers, Nick Chrisman, he's at Namely. Yep. Yeah, super, super smart, nice guy. And Kyle Lacey, he and I worked together when he was VP of marketing at OpenView. He's the VP of marketing now at Lessonly. We've frequently, both of these guys have shared just our best practices and, they're doing every day. Like those are the people that are helpful to me just as practitioners. Like, okay, definitely don't do this or do this. Those are good conversations.
And to your point about hiring an up and comer, Nick, I think when he joined Namely, I don't think he had a lot of marketing experience.
No.
But he's made himself an amazing marketer.
Because he's smart and he's like a doer. He's a go-getter. And now he's just crushing it. And I'm happy to know him, and he's, good guy.
Cool. Any other sort of investors or people that are inspirational for you that you think we should know about?
Before Signpost, I think, I hadn't had a lot of investor relations before coming to Signpost, and I know to mention someone on my current board is the ones on my current board are fantastic. People like Tyson Barber, Justin Lafayette, Todd Dagres, Adam Marcus, like those are from Spark, Georgian, and OpenView. They have all been fantastic. When you present to the board, you want to know their thoughts. These are really smart guys, not like, why isn't this going the right way? But like, okay, but what is your perspective on how we might make a change? They've all been fantastic in like helping to guide that conversation, which I found very, very helpful. So they're on the top of my list.
Awesome. Last question for you. First of all, you're an M83 fan, is that right?
Yeah. I have the weirdest taste in music.
I don't think it's that weird. Is it Road Blaster an album or a song?
It's a song that, they like do all these like 80s song remakes kind of.
Okay.
That's like the most 80s I've found. So
I'm going to listen to it this afternoon. And then your favorite book, movie, or podcast?
My favorite book is Darwin's Doubt. I love reading the different views between sort of like religion and atheism and like how the sciences converge. So that's my latest one. It's very difficult to get through. It's very dense. It's about intelligent design, like the concept that how could we have evolved, even though that's my point of view, how could we have evolved? The way we were designed is too intelligent for evolution. But I like the competing views because obviously I have one very strong point of view. This is sort of another POV, and it's very interesting. It's dense, but it's very interesting. A Blind Watchmaker is another one. That's another one that's intense.
I think the people that don't believe in evolution will have even more trouble when they do more reading and come up with the theory, realize the theories of that life came from Mars. It was like there was mitochondria and like single cell organisms on these asteroids that hit the Earth. And anyway.
No way. Oh, I'll look that up. What's your favorite book, by the way? I'm interested.
I'll tell you what I'm reading now. My favorite book overall is Tender as the Night, but that's because I'm a depressive person and I like tragedy. From a marketing perspective, I just read Play Bigger. Do you know that book?
No. I'll put it on my list.
It's all about category design, which is very similar to what you're talking about. And then the other book that I read recently is A Bend in the River, which is about Africa in the 70s by V.S. Naipaul. But that's because I'm not always reading business books, which I encourage other people
to. Me too.
Exactly. If people want to get in touch with you, do you have a preferred channel? Are you open to people reaching out to you?
Yes, definitely. LinkedIn, or you can send me an email. I'm here at Signpost, Kayal@signpost.com.
Awesome. Andrea, thank you so much for joining the Sales Hacker podcast. And you've been always insightful. Congratulations on all your success at Signpost. And,
thanks, Sam.
And we're going to talk to you soon. Thank you, Andrea.
Cool. All right, Sam. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. What a great interview with Andrea. This is Sam's Corner. A couple thoughts from Andrea's interview. She shared so much insight. First of all, she very specifically gave us a framework for a rebrand. So if you're a company thinking about going through that process, there are specific details. 10-week process. The outputs were 4 pages for the website where the agency wrote the copy. It was a partnership with product so that the product exemplified and represented the brand. The agency got $100,000. Andrea's got references for us if we need them. So that's a very specific thing because I'm always thinking about brand and how to manage it and what the investment is worth relative to agency partners that we might use at different organizations that I'm working for. And then the second thing that she mentioned, which she's very focused on, is LTV to CAC. Obviously, when you're thinking about demand generation, you need to be thinking about the lifetime value of the customer and how much it costs to acquire them. I will add, however, that LTV can be a very misleading metric if you're capital constrained, because especially at very low numbers, if you're not seeing that money come back, it may be that there's a reasonable lifetime value, but if you're spending a tremendous amount of money to acquire the customer because you're under pressure to grow and it's going to take you a long time to get the money back, that's going to impose very significant capital constraints on the business. And you've got to think about your balance sheet. So that's why those ratios are so important, because if you're at anything below really 3-to-1, if you're at 2-to-1 or 1.5-to-1, you're getting paid back. That's true, but you're getting paid back over the life of a customer, which may be years. And so you got to really think about making sure you have the capital relative to the LTV to CAC ratio so that you can scale. This has been Sam's Corner. Thanks so much for listening. To check out the show notes, see upcoming guests, and play more episodes from our incredible lineup of sales leaders, visit saleshacker.com/podcast. You can also find the Sales Hacking Podcast on iTunes or Google Play or anywhere that you consume your podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your peers on LinkedIn, Twitter, or elsewhere. Special thanks again to this month's sponsors at Gong. See more at gong.io/saleshacker. And finally, if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at Sam F. Jacobs or on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Sam F. Jacobs. See you next time.